Hello all of you out there in internet land. My name is Josh and I'm doing a video to show you the basics of vaping. Using a mod, building your own coils, talk about the liquids, all that good stuff. Start out with, this is a Caravelle clone mod with an IGO W drip tip. Drilled out the holes in the top, 7/64 of an inch drill bit. Alright, now I have a coil with 26 gauge wire wrapped around a 7/64 inch drill bit, and it's a nano coil, or micro coil, sorry. Nano coils are a little smaller, looks like that. Wrapped around 5 times, not sure what the ohms are, I don't have one of those little readers, but this is more just showing you what you need to know, because when I first started, I had a hard time finding everything I wanted to learn all in one place, kind of had to search around a lot. So, to start with, we'll talk about the batteries. 18650 is a size of battery when people are talking about stuff like that. This is an 18650. It's a Sony VTC5 18650. That's this one. It's 2500 milliamp hours and 30 amps. This is an eFest battery. It's also 2500 milliamp hours, but it's 35 amps. So basically that just means this puts out more power, and since they're the same amount of milliamp hours, this one puts out more amps than this one, so this one will not last as long, but it'll hit harder. I'm going to plug both of them in, take a pull, we'll see if you can actually even tell a difference. If you can't tell the difference, then the one with a better battery life is probably going to be your better choice. So let's go ahead and start with that. Go ahead and start with the 35 amp. Not bad, just to keep it even. I'm going to re-drip and swap out the battery to the 30 amp. We'll see how this goes. That's the Sony 18650 VTC5. And to me it looked like I got a little bit more smoke with the 35 amp, which is to be expected. It's what it's supposed to do. But depending upon how you set up your coil is actually how you get more smoke. So now that we tried those out just to show the batteries, let's talk about the coils. Different coils will last different amounts of time depending upon the resistance on them. That's what causes it to heat up, is how much their resistance there is. So when everybody talks about ohms, that's what they're talking about, is the resistance of your coil. Basically, the lower the resistance, the hotter your coil is going to get. Also, the more electricity it's going to use when you fire it. Basically, the longer the wire, the more resistance. So if you have a micro coil like this, then you're going to have more wraps on the same size. If you're wrapping it around a drill bit, same size drill bit, the more wraps, the more resistance, the less hot it's going to get. Simple as that. So if you do a smaller drill bit or whatever you're wrapping around, so what I'm going to do today in this video is go from my wire 26 gauge wrapped around the 7/64 inch drill bit, which is this. I'm going to wrap it around the 5/64 inch drill bit, so it's a good amount smaller, if you can see there. So my battery is basically going to drain faster, and it's going to be a lot hotter, give me a lot more vapor. So when we're talking about building your coil, and we're talking about how long you want it to be, or anything like that, bunch of different factors factor in, like how much flavor there's going to be and how much vapor there's going to be. Basically, more surface area you have on the lower resistance. So say you had the same amount of resistance on a bigger coil than a smaller coil, you could get, depending upon how you wrap your coil, you could get more surface area of your wick actually touching the coil, which will give you, it'll be a little bit cooler, and it'll vape a lot easier if you have more surface area. So surface area is definitely a good thing when you're building a coil. So when you go from the bigger drill bit to the smaller drill bit, you can either have the same amount of wraps, which will lower the resistance, or you could do more wraps, and you could probably get close to the same resistance with like an extra wrap on the smaller drill bit, but you'll have more surface area. It'll give you a little bit better flavor, and it'll help it stay cooler. You also need to worry about what kind of wick you want to use. I personally prefer cotton. Most people do. When you're going through here on these videos, looking at what people are always talking about, cotton's really easy to work with, as you're going to see in my video. You can also use eco wool. Got a piece of both right here. Piece of cotton, piece of eco wool. Cotton's just a little easier to work with. You can really easily just change out the wick if it starts to taste burnt. Which basically your liquids are what's gonna start to burn, and it'll taste burnt. So when you're doing it, you have the cotton, you can just ball it up to make it more like a piece of yarn really looking. You can tighten that down. Also, if you are using cotton, want to worry about where you're getting your cotton. They say that you can use anything that is just 100% cotton and it'll work. I've tried a couple different kinds of cotton, and really just any old random cotton, if it's just from the grocery store, will kind of taste a little funky when you first start vaping with it. All the chemicals, I'm assuming, that they use in packaging and processing, all that garbage you can taste when you're vaping until it all kind of comes out in your vapor, but you probably don't want to be breathing that. Best thing I've found is organic cotton works really well. Some of them don't have any off flavors as soon as you start using them. That's what I have right here, CVS organic cotton. I can use this, and I don't have to worry about any kind of negative flavors going through when I'm vaping. It tastes perfectly fine as soon as you put it in. Eco wool, that's what's nice about that. It's made for vaping. You don't have to worry about any of that because you're getting it from a vape shop. The only thing is it's a lot harder to change out. Pretty much when you change out your eco wool, you have to change your coil every time. Another thing, eco wool doesn't burn, cotton does. So you have to keep the cotton wet constantly. You can't dry fire it. When people talk about having a burnt taste when they're using eco wool, the eco wool itself doesn't actually burn. It's the sugars in your vapor that are burning. So basically you have to change that out just because of the sugars in the vapor that are getting left behind and burnt. And you can't just clean it off, it'll taste nasty still. So you have to change out the whole entire thing. So it's kind of a pain with cotton. You just pull the old bit of cotton out and slip a new piece in. It's a lot simpler. And I've never had to change out my coil just because of a taste. Whenever it's just taste related or burnt tasting, I just changed the cotton and it was like new again. So that's something to think about when you're trying to decide between eco wool, silica, and cotton. Another thing, if you wanted to use just any kind of cotton, or you can't find organic cotton that tastes fine as soon as you buy it, you can just boil the cotton. It'll get rid of all of the chemicals that are on it. Just use like filtered water, boil it in filtered water, rinse it out, maybe even boil it a second time if you want to, and just let it dry out overnight, and it'll be fine the next day. You can start using it for vaping and won't have all those off flavors. Next thing I want to talk about is your liquids. So this is the liquid I'm using right now, Villain Vapors Doc Holiday. Pretty good mango guava mix. Some different terms you're going to hear when people are talking about their vapor liquids. VGPG, it's vegetable glycerin propylene glycol. You can use either to make your vaping liquid. Usually they have both of them in there. Some of them have 100% VG. Don't think I've ever seen 100% PG, but they could be out there. I'm not super sure myself. So the VG is more of a smoother kind of taste to it, and you provides more vapor. The PG kind of gives you more of a throat feel, and it's more like a cigarette smoke kind of a feeling. It's a little bit more dry too, tasting. And the nicotine levels, some places or some companies go by percent. When it's like 2.4%, they're just talking about, it's the same thing as if somebody says 24 milligrams. It's exactly the same. I don't know why some of them do one way or the other. Seems like it's easier to me just to say milligrams, because when they're talking about it, it's actually milligrams per milliliter. So if it's 24 milligrams, that's 24 milligrams per milliliter of fluid. Cigarette's only 1.2 milligrams, I think it is, for like a Camel filter. So 24 milligrams per milliliter and this I think is a 15 milliliter bottle. So that's a ridiculous amount of nicotine that you're smoking for every milliliter of here. With dripping, most people don't drip that high. It's a lot more harsh tasting. So I use 6. It's still pretty smooth, tastes good. And the more nicotine that's in a liquid, the less of the actual flavor you're going to have in that liquid, just because you're going to have nicotine taking the place of the flavoring, essentially. And on that note, let's start this build. What I have is 26 gauge Canthal. This one is a 7/64, and I'm going to switch it out to a 3 32 inch drill bit. 5 wraps is what I had originally. Gave me a good amount of vape. I'll show you without the tip on. You can see pretty good. I just wanted kind of a little bit more kick. Give you a little bit more vapor. So, take out the old one here. Just unscrew all the posts. Kind of pull everything out here. Alright, so you got just some bare pins sticking up. I'm going to unlock this. Whenever you're doing a build, make sure you lock the bottom. I have burnt myself by leaving the bottom unlocked, and I was working on it and accidentally clicked the bottom. You figure it out immediately because you hear the sizzle of the coils and feel the heat on your finger. Alright, so I'm going to go from... I decided to change my mind. Difference wasn't big enough. Decided to go from the 7/64 to a 5/64. That's much smaller. Should give me the difference I'm actually looking for. Going from the just going down to 1/64 of an inch, just it's not going to make that much of a difference. Give me a little bit more vapor, but not quite what I'm looking for. Want to blow some big clouds, which I'm sure most of you watching this is exactly what you're trying to do. So, starting out, just want to have your wire nice and straight, if you can get it there. Alright. Try and get it nice and straight. Everybody's always saying cut 6 inches of wire off and then wrap from there. It's pretty pointless, just a waste of wire, because everybody always ends up cutting like 3 inches off of the end of their wire after they're done. I just use the whole bit of wire. Start with one end, leave about a ½ inch leg sticking off the edge there. Start wrapping around and try and get the coils as close together as possible. Also keep your wire nice and straight. So we wrap and we wrap, and you can just spin the drill bit around your other finger where the wire is until you get up to 5 wraps, which is what I'm going for. And there's 5. Show you what that looks like if I can. I'll go ahead and take a picture and insert it in the middle of the video so you guys can see. Get started with the second coil. Same thing. You want to have about a ½ inch of a leg sticking off the end of your drill bit, and you wrap it around. Same amount of times. If you have a different amount of wraps or different size coil on one side or the other of your dual coil build, then one side's going to burn hotter, it's going to suck up the juice faster. You're going to have to drip one side more often than the other, and it's not going to be great. So make sure you have the same size coil on both sides, or if you're doing a single coil, you can do a single coil even if you have the dual coil tip on there. You just only use the left two or the right two posts, whatever you want to do. Just make sure if you do a dual coil that the coils are the same size, otherwise they burn unevenly. And there's 4 wraps and 5 wraps. Alright, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks good. And second coil, like I was saying, everybody's always talking about doing 6 inches, cutting it off. I didn't do that. I left a 1/2 inch off one end, wrapped what I wanted. Now I'm going to cut it where I need it, rather than wasting 3 inches on each coil I do. And then stick it through the holes in your posts, like so. Oh, left a little bit of wire in this one. That's hanging on the edge, apparently. And using the drill bit to kind of position this how you want it makes it a lot easier. Otherwise it'll just kind of go willy-nilly. So you get one in, using the drill bit like I said. Get one of the coils in, screw down the outer post. And then obviously if you have like a build with the dual center posts, then it's just one per, and you would just screw down your coil altogether. But do that one. Don't screw down the center one, because then you're not going to be able to get the second coil in, obviously. If it's tight, put the second one through the holes in the posts. This is what this one looks like. Got it through. Tighten down the outside posts. We're sharing the center post, so we put that through. Get that in there. You want them to be about the same distance away from the posts as well. That'll give you an even burn. Stick that in there. Like I was saying, the length of wire is what determines the ohms. So if one has more wire, then it's going to have a higher ohm, meaning it's not going to burn as much. So go ahead and screw down the outside leg on there. You don't want to over tighten your posts. You don't want to accidentally strip the screws, cause some problems, make you have to get a new drip tip. Just has to be snug. After you're all done, you want to make sure you re-snug them just in case they loosen up while you're doing cotton and everything. But what I do here, once you get both coils put in, obviously tighten down the center coil, stick your drill bit through. You can kind of adjust them, make them nice and level, get them where you want them. Make sure they're even on both sides where the posts are. And then, see how I got these legs sticking out? What I do is bend them up so that they're straight up and down with just flathead screwdriver. I got this little multi-tool flathead screwdriver, Phillips head screwdriver. Just bend them up here. And then I cut them off as far down as I can. If you have some of those little tiny wire cutters, you can get them cut pretty well. But you don't want them sticking out too much, so just cut those bad boys off. Like I was saying, with this Kanthal, unless you go with a really high gauge, which you can, and I didn't mention before, but the gauge of wire also matters. The lower the gauge wire, the bigger the wire. lower the number on the gauge of wire, the bigger the wire, and the less resistance it's going to have. So you got to take that into account too when you're using Canthal. Got to make sure you know what you're picking, because same amount of wraps on a larger gauge wire is going to produce more heat. So if you didn't want to do that intentionally and you got a bigger gauge wire, then you're going to have some problems when you use the same exact setup and you're expecting the same results. It's going to come out a little different. So once you get that clipped, all the ends pushed up, it's all nice and pretty and clean looking. Make sure you have your coils adjusted flat. I'll be right back. I need to grab some tweezers to pinch this. Well, couldn't find my tweezers, but hookah tongs, next best thing. So this is what I was talking about. They say you need a blowtorch. You do not need a blowtorch. Sure, I guess that makes that easier. I don't know. Whatever. What I do is, I got my coils on there, everything's screwed down, right? Looks all nice and new and pretty. So you heat it up until it's red hot. Ooh, that's bright. Let go, pinch the coils. This is exactly what they tell you to do with a blowtorch, except you're supposed to heat it up with a blowtorch. This thing heats them up for you. So do it again. Just make sure they're all nice and touching. Works exactly the same as a blowtorch. Just keep doing it until all of your wires, every wire on your coil, is nice and close together, as close as you can get it. It's the main thing with these micro coils. Just getting your coils nice and evenly touching. Alright, and then you want them to be glowing from the inside out. Let's see if I can get this to show you. And you want them to glow at the same pace. So see how they start at the inside and then go to the outside of the coil? Looks pretty good to me. Also kind of looks like a flashlight. But anyways, so now that we got our coils all smushed together, looking nice and good and touching and everything, so our next step, now that we have the coils set up, is our wick, which, like I was saying, I prefer cotton, especially with these micro coils. It's just a little bit easier. Let's try and even out my coil a little bit more. After I pinched them together, they're not quite in line. That wasn't too hard to fix. Just stick my drill bit back through. To start with, you probably want to know how you can use a cotton ball like this to get through a tiny little hole like that. Doesn't really work out too well. But cotton balls are just wound up pieces of cotton. If you kind of just pull on the edges here, you will find an end piece. Aha! And then it'll unravel into a line of cotton. Once you have your line of cotton, rip it in half, down the middle. Take one half, roll it into a little ball, kind of press the sides in, and then twist it up a little. You want the end to be a nice point, turn it into a string essentially at the end, fold it over a little so that it's got a kind of a more blunt end. Looks like a string there. And then you do a much lighter twist on the rest of it just to make sure it'll go through your coil. So you got your cotton string, and you take it, put it through the back side here. So you got your two coils, one right here, one on the back side over here. So I take it and stick it through the center of your coil, and And then while you're doing this, so you pull through, and you pull through, and twist while you're pulling it through. That compresses the cotton. You twist the backside as you're pulling through. It compresses the cotton, keeps from just bunching up on the backside as you're pulling through. So I pull through a good amount here. Alright, there we go. Probably a little bit more than halfway on this side. So then, you got this going through here. And what you're going to do is wrap around to this side, come through this back coil. Like so. Go through the coil. And then, as you can see here, same thing. Twist it, wrap it, and as you can see, it's going to wrap around this post right here. That gives you a little bit better liquid kind of carrying over from one coil to the other. So even if they are burning a little bit uneven, you're still going to have the juice carrying from one side to the other. Alright. Alright, so what we have here is our cotton going through both coils, through the center, coming down, and then what I like to do is double back and stuff it underneath of my coil. So it just goes straight underneath. See that? Underneath the coil. You can see there. And then take your scissors and cut that cotton off at the end. And then just, you can see I tucked the edges in. It's going under the coil. Nice pretty white cotton going under there. Same thing on the other side. Yeah, twist that up a little. Stuffer with just a flathead screwdriver is all I'm using. Most people should have everything I have used so far just in their house. Cut that end off. Stuff that extra bit of cotton where you cut underneath your coil, and that just gives you a little bit better wicking and lets you hold a little bit more liquid having that cotton stuffed under there. So that's what it looks like when you're done. And like I said, this is 5/64 inch drill bit, wrapped 5 times. And you can see there, it just makes a little U shape that goes around just to help wick around both sides. Throw a little liquid on here right now. I'm using some Doc Holiday Villain Vapor. Pretty good. I'll probably do a review on this in a video, but just gonna thoroughly soak this with liquid, and then we can test it out. Alright. Thoroughly soaked it. Doesn't really look much different. It's a white liquid, so goes on clear. And we'll give this a try. Go ahead and show you. See how that vapes. Oh yeah. Here we go. Pretty good. Let's try that one more time. Pretty intense, and that was with the VTC5 that I was talking about earlier. We can go ahead and try it out with the eFest 35 amp. See how that goes. And I've been trying to do the same amount of time on these, but this puts out a lot more vapor, so it's a little harder to go for the full 5 seconds like I did before. Try out this 35 amp battery.
definitely hits. Probably need to re-drip already, actually.
Pretty good. Alright. So I think that's it for this video. Like I was saying, I'm going to start doing probably a weekly video, either different builds, trying out new flavors, just talking about new vaping in general. But that's it for today. We'll see you guys next week.